She inherited the land, but only if she married a stranger by sunset. Wyoming Territory, autumn of 1879. The lawyer's voice droned through the dusty parlor like a death rattle. Abigail Stone sat rigid in the high-backed chair, her spine straight as iron, her hands folded in her lap so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Around her the room smelled of old tobacco and older grief. Her uncle's estate, such as it was, lay spread across the table in papers yellowed by time and spite. And to my niece Abigail Stone, the lawyer read, adjusting his spectacles, I leave the entirety of the Dalton Creek Ranch, including all livestock, structures, and lands therein. Abigail's breath caught. The ranch, 200 acres of good grazing land, water rights, a future. However, that single word fell like an axe. The inheritance shall only pass to Miss Stone upon her lawful marriage to Mr. Henry Dalton, son of my late business partner, within 30 days of this reading. Should she refuse, or should the marriage not take place, the entirety of the estate shall be sold at auction and the proceeds donated to the Territorial Land Office. Silence crashed through the room. Abigail rose slowly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. Excuse me? The lawyer cleared his throat. Your uncle's will is quite clear, Miss Stone. Marriage or nothing. This is absurd. Her voice was measured, but fire burned beneath each word. I will not be bartered like cattle. Then you will have nothing, came a voice from the doorway. She turned. A man stood framed in the afternoon light. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a plain work shirt and dust-covered boots. His hat was in his hands, his dark hair slightly too long. His face was weathered, not old, just lived in. His eyes, a pale gray, met hers without flinching. Henry Dalton. You must be the stranger I'm supposed to marry, Abigail said coolly. Seems that way. His voice was low, steady, without apology. She studied him. No smirk, no arrogance, just a man standing in a doorway, looking as trapped as she felt. And you're comfortable with this arrangement? She asked. No. He stepped inside. But my father owed your uncle a debt. This was how he chose to settle it. After both of them were dead. Abigail laughed, sharp and bitter. How convenient. Henry said nothing. The lawyer shuffled his papers. The wedding can be arranged for Saturday. That gives you 3 days to... I need air. Abigail swept past Henry without looking at him, her skirts rustling like a flag in retreat. Outside, the wind was merciless. It tore across the open plains, bending the tall grass into waves of gold and green. The sky stretched wide and indifferent above her. She had come west to escape, to build something of her own, and now, even here, men decided her fate. Behind her, boots crunched on gravel. I didn't ask for this either, Henry said quietly. She didn't turn, then refuse. Can't? My father's debts die with me or get paid. Your uncle made sure of that. So we're both prisoners. Seems so. Abigail finally looked at him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something she recognized. Resignation, and beneath it a flicker of anger. If I agree, she said slowly, this is a business arrangement, nothing more. Henry nodded, agreed. I keep my own room, my own space. You do not touch me without permission. Agreed. And if either of us finds this unbearable, we dissolve it, quietly, after a year. He considered this. Then extended his hand. 1 year. She looked at his hand. Calloused, honest, the hand of a man who worked, not took. Slowly she placed her palm in his. His grip was firm but not crushing, warm but not possessive. Saturday then, she said. Saturday. They stood like that for a moment. Two strangers bound by ink and old men's grudges, neither smiling, neither fleeing. Just standing. The wedding was a grim affair. No flowers, no music, just a preacher with a voice like gravel and a witness who smelled of whiskey. Abigail wore a gray dress, high-necked and practical. No veil, no pretense. Henry stood beside her in his only clean shirt, freshly shaved, smelling faintly of soap and leather. The preacher spoke quickly, as if he too wanted this over with. Do you, Henry Dalton, take this woman? I do. And do you, Abigail Stone? I do. No kiss, just signatures on paper that felt heavier than iron. Afterward they rode in silence to the ranch. The Dalton Creek Ranch sat in a valley between two low hills, sheltered from the worst of the wind. The house was modest wood and stone with a wide porch and a chimney that leaned slightly to the left. The barn was larger than the house. That told Abigail everything she needed to know about priorities here. Henry dismounted first, then offered his hand. She ignored it and climbed down herself. He said nothing, just grabbed her single trunk from the wagon and carried it inside. The house was clean. Sparse. A table, 4 chairs, a stone fireplace, shelves with tin plates and cups. "Your room's upstairs," Henry said, nodding toward a narrow staircase. "I'll take the one down here." Abigail looked at him sharply. "You're giving me the better room? You're the one who inherited this place. Seems right." She didn't know what to say to that. He set her trunk at the base of the stairs. "I've got cattle to check. There's bread and butter in the cold box. Coffee's on the stove." Then he walked out. Abigail stood alone in the house that was now hers, but didn't feel like it. She climbed the stairs slowly. The room was small but bright, a bed with a patchwork quilt, a window overlooking the hills, a washstand with a cracked mirror. On the bedside table sat a single wildflower in a jar of water. She touched the petals gently. Henry Dalton, it seemed, was not entirely made of stone. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Downstairs she could hear him moving, the scrape of a chair, the clink of a cup, then silence. She wondered if he was awake too, wondering the same thing she was. How long could 2 people live like this, side by side but separate, married in name, strangers in truth? And what would happen if one of them wanted more? Morning came cold and bright. Abigail dressed quickly and came downstairs to find Henry already gone. The fire was lit, coffee was made, a plate of biscuits sat covered on the table. She poured herself a cup and stood at the window. Outside she could see him in the corral, working with a horse. His movements were patient, steady. He spoke to the animal in low tones she couldn't hear. But she saw the horse calm under his hands. Saw the way he moved, not with force, but with certainty. She turned away. This was the man she had married. A stranger who left her wildflowers and made her coffee, but asked for nothing in return. Not yet. The first week passed in careful silence. They moved around each other like dancers who had never learned the same steps. Polite, distant, each occupying their own corner of the house, the land, the day. Abigail rose early and worked. She scrubbed floors that didn't need scrubbing, mended curtains that weren't torn, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from wandering to the man who slept 1 floor below. Henry worked from dawn until dusk, fixing fence lines, tending cattle, splitting wood for winter. They ate meals together in silence, passed salt without words, cleared plates like clockwork. It was unbearable. Not because it was cruel, but because it was empty. One morning Abigail found a broken wheel on the supply wagon. She stood staring at it, hands on her hips, calculating how much it would cost to replace, how long it would take to get to town without it. "I can fix that." She turned. Henry stood behind her, wiping his hands on a rag. "I can manage," she said automatically. "Didn't say you couldn't. Said I can fix it." She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Pride was expensive, and she was tired. "All right," she said. He nodded and knelt beside the wheel, examining the split wood and bent iron. Abigail watched him work. His hands moved with quiet competence, no wasted motion, no show. "You'll need to hold this steady," he said without looking up. She hesitated, then knelt across from him. Their hands brushed as she gripped the wheel, brief, accidental. But neither pulled away quickly. "Push down when I say," Henry instructed. She nodded. "Now." She pushed. He hammered. The iron bent back into place with a sharp ring. Again. They worked in rhythm. Push, strike, adjust, repeat. When it was done, Henry sat back on his heels. "That'll hold until spring." "Thank you," Abigail said quietly. He glanced at her, really looked at her for the first time in days. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said. "Neither do you." Something flickered in his eyes. Not quite a smile, but close. That afternoon they worked side by side in the garden. Abigail pulled weeds. Henry repaired the fence that kept the deer out. "This soil's good," she said, brushing dirt from her hands. "We could plant more next year. Carrots, potatoes, maybe even squash." "We?" Henry asked. She froze. The word had slipped out without thought. I mean, the ranch, she corrected quickly. Right. He drove another post into the ground. The ranch. But his tone suggested he'd heard what she really meant. That night Abigail came downstairs for water and found Henry sitting at the table, a letter spread before him. He looked up, startled. I didn't mean to intrude, she said. You're not. He folded the letter quickly. Too quickly. She poured her water but didn't leave. Bad news. Nothing I can't handle. That's not what I asked. Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then he unfolded the letter and slid it across the table. She read it slowly. It was from a bank in Cheyenne, a loan her uncle had taken out before his death. Now due, with interest. A significant sum. This is why he tied the inheritance to marriage, she said slowly. He knew the ranch was drowning in debt. Henry nodded. My father co-signed. When he died, it became my responsibility. And mine, apparently. I'll handle it, Henry said firmly. It's not your burden. Abigail set the letter down. We're married, your burdens are mine now. That was the arrangement. That's not what you signed up for. Neither did you. She met his eyes. But here we are. Silence stretched between them. Then Henry said quietly, There's another letter. Came yesterday. He pulled a second envelope from his pocket. The seal was broken, the paper expensive. Abigail read it. Her blood went cold. It was from her uncle's cousin, Edmund Stone, a man she'd met once and despised immediately. He was contesting the will, claiming the marriage was a sham, that she and Henry had conspired to defraud the estate. He's coming here, Henry said. In 2 weeks, with a lawyer and a territorial judge. Abigail's hands trembled. He can't do this. He can try. If he proves the marriage is not genuine. She couldn't finish the thought. We lose everything, Henry said simply. They sat in the lamplight, the weight of it pressing down like a physical thing. What do we do? Abigail whispered. Henry looked at her. His jaw was set, but his eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Determination. We prove him wrong, he said. How? We act like a married couple. Publicly. Convincingly. Abigail's heart hammered. You mean, we go to town together. We attend church. We let people see us as husband and wife. That's all pretend. Is it? Henry asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them. Abigail didn't answer. Couldn't. Because somewhere in the past week, in the quiet mornings and shared work and the fixed wagon wheel and the wildflowers, something had shifted. And she wasn't sure anymore where the pretending ended and the truth began. The next morning they rode into town together. Henry helped her down from the wagon. His hand lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. People noticed. Mrs. Crenshaw from the general store smiled knowingly. Well, don't you two look settled? We're managing, Abigail said carefully. More than managing, I'd say. The woman winked. That's the look of newlyweds if I ever saw it. Abigail felt heat rise to her cheeks. Henry's hand pressed gently against her back. A small gesture, but it steadied her. They shopped together. Henry carried her parcels. She laughed at something he said about stubborn cattle. It felt natural. Too natural. On the ride home, Abigail was quiet. You did well today, Henry said. I was acting. Were you? She didn't answer. But when they reached the ranch and he offered his hand to help her down, she took it. And didn't let go immediately. Their eyes met. Abigail, he said quietly. Henry, she whispered. The space between them felt charged, fragile. Then a rider appeared on the ridge. They both turned. The rider came fast, dust rising behind him. When he reached the yard, he dismounted roughly. It was a man Abigail didn't recognize. Lean, cold-eyed. Henry Dalton? The man asked. That's me. The man handed him an envelope. You're summoned to Cheyenne, week from Thursday, hearing on the estate. Henry took the paper. We'll be there. The man's gaze slid to Abigail. Assessing. Judging. Make sure you are. He mounted and rode off. Abigail's stomach twisted. It's starting. Henry looked at the summons, then at her. Then we'd better be ready. But as they stood there in the fading light, the ranch around them, the future uncertain, one thing had become clear. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about them. and what they were willing to fight for. The days before the hearing passed in a strange, suspended tension. They prepared. Henry went over the ranch accounts documenting every repair, every head of cattle, every expense. Abigail gathered the marriage certificate, her uncle's will, letters from neighbors attesting to their union. But beneath the paperwork and preparation, something else was building. They worked closer now, spoke more freely. The silences between them had changed from awkward to comfortable. One evening, as Abigail reviewed documents at the kitchen table, Henry brought her coffee without being asked. "You take it black, right?" he said. She looked up, surprised. "You noticed?" "I notice a lot of things." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary. Abigail took the cup, her fingers brushing his. "Thank you." He lingered. "You should rest. You've been at this for hours." "I can't afford to miss anything. Edmund will be looking for any crack in our story." Henry pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "Then tell me, what's our story?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "If someone asks how we fell in love, what do we say? When did I know you were the one? What was our first kiss like?" Abigail's cheeks flushed. We haven't." "I know." His voice was soft. "But they'll ask. Edmund will make sure of it." She set down her pen. "What do we tell them?" Henry leaned back, thinking, the truth, or close to it. "The truth is, we married strangers because dead men told us to." "The truth," Henry said slowly, "is that I saw a woman who refused to be broken, who stood in that lawyer's office with her head high even though the world was taking everything from her, who worked beside me without complaint, who made this house feel less empty." Abigail's breath caught. "The truth," he continued, "is that somewhere between fixing that wagon wheel and sitting at this table, I stopped thinking of you as an obligation." She couldn't speak. "What's your truth?" he asked quietly. Abigail looked down at her hands. "My truth is that I came here angry, ready to fight, ready to walk away the moment I could." She lifted her eyes to his. "But then I saw a man who gave me the better room, who left wildflowers, who asked for nothing but gave everything, who looked at me like I was a person, not property." Henry's jaw tightened. "My truth," she whispered, "is that I'm not pretending anymore." The air between them thrummed with unspoken things. Henry stood slowly. He walked around the table and stopped beside her chair. "Neither am I," he said. He offered his hand. She took it. He pulled her gently to her feet. They stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. "Abigail," he said, her name rough in his throat. "Henry." He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "If I kiss you now," he said quietly, "it won't be for show. It won't be for Edmund or judges or anyone else." "I know," she breathed. "It'll be because I want to." "Then do it." He leaned in slowly, carefully, like she was something precious. When his lips met hers, gentle and sure, something inside Abigail broke open. Not painfully, but like dawn breaking. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper, a question and an answer all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Henry rested his forehead against hers. "That's what I'll tell them, that I kissed my wife in the kitchen on a Tuesday night, because I couldn't wait another moment." Abigail laughed softly, tears pricking her eyes. "And I'll tell them I kissed him back." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the lamplight. Then Henry said quietly, "Whatever happens in Cheyenne, I want you to know something." "What?" "This isn't about the land for me anymore. It's about you, about us." Abigail pulled back just enough to see his face. "Henry Dalton, are you saying you love me?" He smiled, small and real. "I'm saying I'm falling, and I don't want to stop." She kissed him again. Longer this time. When she finally stepped back, she said firmly, "Then we fight, for this, for us." Agreed. But their peace was short-lived. 2 days before they were set to leave for Cheyenne, a rider arrived at dawn. Abigail was feeding the chickens when she heard the horse. Henry emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. The rider was young, barely 20, wearing a deputy's badge. "Mr. Dalton?" he called. "That's me." The deputy dismounted. "I have orders to escort you and your wife to Cheyenne immediately. The hearing's been moved up." "Why?" Abigail demanded, walking over. Don't know, ma'am. Just following orders. Henry's jaw clenched. We need time to prepare. You've got 2 hours. We leave at noon. The deputy tipped his hat and rode to the edge of the property to wait. Abigail's heart raced. This is Edmund's doing. He's trying to catch us off guard. Then we don't let him. Henry turned to her. Pack light. Bring the documents. We'll handle this together. Inside, as Abigail gathered papers with shaking hands, Henry came up behind her. Hey, he turned her gently. Look at me. She did. We're stronger than he thinks, Henry said. Stronger than we thought. She nodded, steadying herself. I need to tell you something, she said suddenly. Before we go, before all of this. What? She took a breath. My uncle, he didn't just leave me this ranch. He left me a letter, hidden in the attic. I found it the second day I was here. Henry waited. He wrote that he knew he was dying, that he'd made mistakes, owed too many people, but he wanted me to have something real, something that couldn't be taken by smooth-talking men or bad luck. Her voice cracked. He said Henry Dalton was the only man he trusted, that if I gave you a chance I'd see what he saw. A good man. Henry's eyes softened. He was right, Abigail whispered. And I'm sorry I fought it for so long. Henry cupped her face. Don't be, you had every right to fight, but I'm glad you stopped. She kissed him, hard and desperate and full of everything she hadn't known how to say. When they broke apart, she said, let's go prove we're real. We already are. The ride to Cheyenne was long and tense. The deputy kept his distance, but his presence was a reminder of what waited for them. As the city came into view, Abigail felt her stomach twist. Henry reached over and took her hand. Whatever happens, he said, we face it together. She squeezed his hand. Together. They rode into Cheyenne side by side, but waiting at the courthouse steps, arms crossed and smile sharp as a knife, was Edmund Stone. And beside him, a man in expensive clothes and cold eyes. A lawyer, ready for war. Abigail's grip on Henry's hand tightened. This was it. The fight for everything they'd built. And they would not lose. The courtroom smelled of old wood and older judgments. Abigail sat beside Henry at a scarred oak table, their hands clasped beneath it where no one could see, but she could feel his pulse racing in time with hers. Across the aisle, Edmund Stone lounged in his chair like a man who'd already won. His lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Criswell, shuffled papers with theatrical precision. The judge entered, a gray-haired man with a face carved from granite. Judge Horace Blackwell, known for fairness but also for intolerance of lies. Be seated, he commanded. Everyone obeyed. We're here to determine the validity of the marriage between Henry Dalton and Abigail Stone and whether the conditions of Marcus Stone's will have been properly fulfilled. The judge looked over his spectacles. Mr. Criswell, you may begin. The lawyer stood smoothly. Your Honor, I represent Mr. Edmund Stone, rightful heir to the Dalton Creek Ranch. We contend that this so-called marriage is nothing more than a fraud, a scheme concocted to steal an inheritance. Abigail's nails dug into Henry's palm. Criswell continued. The couple married within days of the will reading. They live separately under the same roof. Neighbors report no signs of affection, no courtship, no genuine connection. This is a business arrangement masquerading as matrimony. He turned, pointing dramatically at Henry and Abigail. These two are strangers playing house to claim land that rightfully belongs to my client. The judge's expression remained neutral. Do you have evidence? We do, Your Honor. Criswell produced a stack of documents. Testimony from townspeople. Records showing Miss Stone inquired about annulment procedures. A statement from a ranch hand who claims Mr. Dalton sleeps in the downstairs room, not with his wife. Each word was a nail being driven home. Judge Blackwell examined the papers. Mr. Dalton, do you have representation? Henry stood. No, Your Honor, just my word. Your word against documented testimony. The judge's tone was skeptical. Abigail rose beside Henry. Your Honor, may I speak? Blackwell studied her. You may. She took a breath, steadying herself. Everything Mr. Criswell said is technically true. We did marry quickly. We did live separately at first. I did ask about annulments. Edmund smiled. But, Abigail continued, her voice stronger now, what his testimony doesn't show is why. She stepped forward. I was forced into this marriage by my uncle's will. A man I barely knew made decisions about my life, my future, my body. And yes, I was angry. Furious. Her eyes met Henry's. Henry Dalton had every right to be equally angry. His father's debts bound him to a stranger. Neither of us chose this. She turned back to the judge. But what we did choose was how we handled it. Henry gave me space, respect. He never demanded anything I wasn't willing to give. He worked beside me, not over me. He saw me as a person, not property. Her voice caught, and somewhere between those first angry days and now, I stopped seeing him as an obligation. I started seeing him as a partner, as a friend, as the man I want to spend my life with. Pretty words, Criswell interrupted. But words are easy. Then let me offer more than words, Abigail said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn leather journal. This was my diary, every entry since I arrived at the ranch. She opened it, reading aloud. September 15th. Henry fixed the wagon today. His hands were gentle with the wood. Patient. I wonder if he's that patient with everything. She flipped pages. September 22nd. He left wildflowers again. Does he know what they mean? Does he know they're working? Her voice softened. October 3rd. Tonight he kissed me. Not because anyone was watching. Not for show. Because he wanted to. Because I wanted him to. And I finally understood what my uncle knew, that sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't choose, but learn to choose anyway. Silence filled the courtroom. Edmund's smile had vanished. Judge Blackwell leaned forward. May I see that? Abigail handed him the journal. He read several passages, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Henry. Mr. Dalton, do you have anything to add? Henry stood. His voice was rough with emotion. Your Honor, I'm not good with fancy words. Never have been. But I know this. When I married Abigail, I thought I was doing my duty, paying my father's debt. He looked at her. But she changed everything. She turned a house into a home. She made me remember what it felt like to want tomorrow, to plan for spring, to think about children running through those rooms someday. His jaw tightened. Edmund Stone wants this land because it's valuable. I want it because it's ours, because we built something real there, together. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then Edmund stood. Your Honor, this is all very touching, but feelings don't constitute legal proof. I have documentation. Mr. Stone, the judge interrupted coldly. I've heard enough from you. Edmund blinked. But, sit down. Edmund sat. Judge Blackwell closed the diary and handed it back to Abigail. This court has reviewed the evidence. The marriage certificate is valid. The ceremony was properly conducted, and while the circumstances were unusual, they were not illegal. He looked at Edmund. More importantly, I find no evidence of fraud. What I see is two people trying to make the best of a difficult situation. That's not a crime. That's life. Abigail's heart soared. But the judge wasn't finished. However, he said, and her stomach dropped, there is still the matter of the outstanding debt, the loan to Cheyenne First Bank, $1,700 due immediately. Henry's face went pale. Criswell smiled again. Your Honor, my client is prepared to pay that debt in exchange for the property. I'm sure he is, the judge said dryly. We'll pay it, Henry said firmly. With what? Edmund laughed. You don't have that kind of money. We'll find it. You have 30 days, Judge Blackwell said. If the debt isn't satisfied by then, the bank can foreclose, marriage or no marriage. He struck his gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Abigail leaned against the wagon, trying not to cry. We won, she said. But we're still going to lose everything. Henry came to stand beside her. Not everything. We still have each other. That won't save the ranch. No, he agreed. But maybe it's enough. She looked at him. How can you be calm? Because I'd rather have you and nothing than that land and lose you. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. You're a fool, Henry Dalton. Maybe. He pulled her into his arms. But I'm your fool. She buried her face in his chest, breathing him in. Behind them, footsteps approached. They turned. A woman stood there, older, well-dressed, with kind eyes. Excuse me, you're the Daltons? We are, Henry said cautiously. I'm Margaret Henley. I knew your uncle, Abigail. Marcus and I were close. Once. Abigail blinked. I didn't know he had anyone. He kept many things private. Margaret handed Abigail an envelope. He gave me this before he died. Said if you ever needed help, I should give it to you. I was in the courtroom today. Seems like now is that time. Abigail opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a bank draft for $2,000. She gasped. I don't understand. Margaret smiled sadly. Your uncle loved you, dear. He knew his debts would follow you. This was his way of making sure you had a fighting chance. He made me promise to only give it to you if you chose love over greed. She looked at Henry. He told me if you married Henry for the land, you'd sell it and run. But if you fought for it, if you stayed and built something real, then you deserved his help. Abigail couldn't speak. Henry's arm tightened around her. Pay your debts, Margaret said gently. Build your life. Be happy. That's what he wanted. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the evening crowd. Abigail stared at the bank draft, tears streaming freely now. We can save it, she whispered. We can save everything. Henry turned her to face him. We already did. And there, on the steps of the courthouse, as the sun set over Cheyenne, Henry Dalton kissed his wife. Not for show, not for proof, but because she was his and he was hers, and nothing else mattered. Spring came to Dalton Creek Ranch like a promise kept. The snow melted into rushing streams. Wildflowers painted the hills in purple and gold, and the land that had once felt like a burden now felt like home. Abigail stood on the porch, watching Henry work with the new foal in the corral. His movements were patient, gentle, the same way he'd been with her. 6 months had passed since Cheyenne. 6 months since they'd paid the debt and sent Edmund Stone back east with nothing but his bitterness. The ranch was thriving now. They'd planted crops, expanded the herd, repaired every fence and building. But more than that, they'd built something neither had expected. A life, together. Mama! Abigail turned, laughing. She still wasn't used to the word, but it warmed her every time. A little girl ran toward her, pigtails bouncing. Lily, 7 years old. They'd taken her in 2 months ago when her parents died of fever. Henry hadn't hesitated. There's room, he'd said simply. And love enough. Now Lily wrapped her arms around Abigail's waist. Papa says the foal needs a name. Can I pick? Of course. Abigail kissed the top of her head. What should we call her? Hope. Abigail's throat tightened. That's perfect, sweetheart. Henry joined them on the porch, dusting off his hands. He pulled Abigail close, dropping a kiss on her temple. Supper ready? He asked. Almost. Lily, go wash up. The girls scampered inside. Henry and Abigail stood together, watching the sun dip toward the horizon. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. The way we started? Henry was silent for a moment. Then he said, I regret not meeting you sooner, not having more time, but regret how we started. He turned her to face him. Never, because it gave me you. She smiled, reaching up to cup his face. I hated you at first, you know. I know, he grinned. You made that very clear. And now? Now? He leaned in, his lips brushing hers. Now I can't imagine breathing without you. They kissed as the sky turned gold and orange, as the ranch settled into evening quiet, as everything they'd fought for bloomed around them. Inside, Lily called for them. They went in together, hand in hand. The table was set. The fire crackled. The house smelled of bread and belonging. This was what her uncle had wanted, what he'd known they could build if they just gave each other a chance. Not a marriage of convenience, but a marriage of choice, of love earned through patience, respect, and the courage to let walls fall. After supper, as Lily slept upstairs and the night wrapped around them like a blanket, Henry pulled Abigail into his arms by the fire. I love you, he said. Simple, true. I love you, she whispered back. And in that moment, Abigail Stone Dalton knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Not because dead men had decreed it, but because her heart had chosen it. And that made all the difference. The end came not with thunder, but with peace, with a family gathered around a table, with a foal named Hope running free in the corral, with 2 people who'd been strangers, then reluctant partners, and finally truly, deeply in love. The ranch would grow. Children would come. Seasons would turn. But this moment, this evening of firelight and gentle kisses, and a little girl's laughter echoing through rooms once silent, this was the beginning of everything that mattered. Henry held Abigail closer as the stars emerged overhead. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For staying, for fighting, for choosing me." She turned in his arms, her eyes shining. "You chose me first, Henry Dalton. The moment you gave me that upstairs room, the moment you left those wild flowers, you chose me before I even knew I needed to be chosen." He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. And outside, the wind carried the scent of spring across the land they'd nearly lost but had fought to keep. Their land, their home, their future. Built not on obligation, but on something far stronger. Love.